Hi everybody, here we go with part 3 of my short row heel. This is in the toe up 2 at a time socks. What we have here is I have completed the first half of the short row chart. This shows you all the gaps from the first half of the hourglass shape chart. These are all wrapped once, and you have the same number of wrap stitches from video number 2. And then now we're going to move on to two things. One is the double wraps, which is the second half of the hourglass cast on, or excuse me, short row heel. So we're going to work the prior row's wrapped stitch. You just put the wrap up on the needle, and then since we're on a purl row, we're purl 2 together and make a double wrap, which just means we're going to wrap a stitch that's already been wrapped. Then we're going to turn the work and work across to the other side. And there we're going to continue to make double wraps, and we're going to make a double wrap on top of every stitch that we already wrapped during the first half of the hourglass shaped chart. Once you've worked all these up, you'll have a complete heel. And then we'll go back to the secret tip, which is also worked in the round. Okay, so here's the wrap stitch. I'm going to pop that up, knit the two together, wrap the next stitch. Okay, so that's your double wrap. It's pretty simple and straightforward. You're just going to keep doing the double wraps. I'm just going to grab another needle here, see if I can do this. I don't think I can. I think I'm going to have to move all my stitches in order to share with you guys the last row. So I'm just going to work across this again instead of stopping and giving you another video. I'll show it to you one more time. Okay, so this was also, I wanted to show you that there were 12 stitches that were left unworked. This particular sock I cast on 12 stitches for the toe. Whatever the standard rule of thumb is, whatever you cast on is what you're going to leave behind in the heel. So there's my 2 wraps, and I'm going to purl 2 tog. Then I'm going to wrap the next stitch and turn it and continue to work up my heel. Ignore me. I'm just going to go over, slip these over so that I can get to the next sock, because there is a little thing at the very end of the short row heel chart that I want to share with you. And that is, here you can see we've got a completed heel. It's all finished. And here's the final row of the short row heel chart. Some people have problems with having a gap here. I just worked across the instep. Now I'm going to work the first purl stitch. This is the very last row of the short row heel chart, but we're working back in the round again. So here's the 2 wraps. You throw those up on the needle, and then to close any possible gap that you might have, what you're going to do is pick up the stitch below the stitch you just made. Okay, so I just I just purled the first stitch that remained unwrapped. Now the stitch below that, right there, we're going to pop, yep, that's it. We're going to pop that up on the needle. Now we're going to purl through all 4 stitches, which is the initial purl stitch and the 2 wraps and the stitch that I just picked up from this other stitch. And what happens is you have no hole. Now I'm going to work across to the other side to share with you that last stitch too, because there is another stitch marker. You probably can't see it yet, but it's telling me that I have something else to work. And I like to put a stitch marker on these two stitches after I go back to working in the round so that I can remember that there's something to do there. Okay. See how it changes there? It's got a stitch on it still that's from the short row heel. Even though you go back to working in the round, you still have some work to do. So right there, I probably could have picked up, just as I just did, this stitch and put it on the needle when I worked this wrap and turn stitch, because I see now that it's made a hole there too. So I'm going to pick that up, just the stitch right here below the stitch I just worked, and purl it together with the stitch that has the gap. No gap. And then that stitch is just a purl stitch, which is the last stitch on the short row heel chart. Now what you have is beautiful heels that were worked in record time, and you go back to working the next chart, which is a tip, and I'm not going to share it here. So go get the pattern if you don't know what I'm talking about, but that tip gets you back to working in the round, gets you back to the number of stitches that you had before, and gets you working perfectly. I hope you haven't, you've followed this along and that everything worked easily for you and that you understand it all, and that short row heels and figure 8 cast-ons become the norm for you because it's just so easy and fast. Enjoy!